Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our Market Access and International Approvals webinar series. My name is Crystal and I am part of the Certification and Approvals technical staff here at Vista Compliance Laboratories. Today I'll be presenting to you the Certification and Approvals regulations as well as the technical requirements for electrical, equipment, electronics, and wireless products and devices approvals in Malaysia. The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, or MCMC, regulates the radio frequency spectrum, the regulatory standardization in Malaysia, as well as the import, distribution, and sales of information technology equipment and telecommunication products on the Malaysian market. The management and utilization of the RF spectrum is carried out in an efficient manner and in accordance with the allocation plan so as to prevent the harmful disturbances and interference. MCMC oversees access to communications and multimedia services, provides transparent regulatory processes to facilitate trade in the industry, standardizes usage of the spectrum and other resources, and consults regularly with consumers and service providers to facilitate industry collaboration. Radio frequency RF devices are required to be properly approved by MCMC prior to being marketed or imported into Malaysia, and a certificate of type approval is required for radio equipment and other regulatory devices to be sold in or imported to Malaysia. Vista Laboratories is an EMC RF compliance test lab and product certification body that is an expert in global regulatory approvals for RF devices. So today we will be primarily going over the requirements of radio frequency and telecommunication approvals in the U.S. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the major topics necessary to understand and get your radio devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in Malaysia. If you have any questions on the topic presented today, or any other immediate questions regarding compliance, testing, product certification, you can reach us at info@vistacompliance.com. Without further ado, let's begin the presentation. So starting with a brief overview, what is the MCMC? The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission is the regulatory body whose primary function is to regulate the communications and multimedia industries under the authority granted by the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commissions Act of 1998. Its mission is to carry out and promote the government's national policy objectives for the communications and multimedia sector. MCMC is also charged with overseeing the new regulatory framework for the converging industries of telecommunications, broadcasting, and online activities. The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission's complementary roles include technical regulations, which includes efficient frequency spectrum assignment, the development and enforcement of technical codes and standards, and the administration of numbering and electronic addressing, as well as certification authority regulation, which includes the certifications authority's operations through licensing and audit mechanisms to ensure its trustworthiness. MCMC has specified the standards known as technical codes for the purpose of certification for fixed line and wireless communication equipment. The technical codes define the minimum technical requirements for safety, interoperability, radio frequency, and electromagnetic compatibility. Moreover, the Regulation 14 of the Communication and Multimedia Technical Standards Regulations 2000 states that all communication equipment which are required to be certified under the regulations shall so be certified. MCMC has two main approval criteria for type approval. The two ways to obtain approval is through a full approval, where approval is granted to an application that meets all specified MCMC technical codes, Malaysian standards, international and foreign standards, and conditional approval, which may be classified as temporary approval, which is given with an expiration date until the application is complete, or an interim approval, where an equipment is subject to an interim period or a validity period. Now let's briefly take a look at an overview of the approval process. In Malaysia, you may have heard of SIRUM. It is the Standard and Industrial Research Institute of Malaysia, governed by MCMC, and the certificate is issued by CMCS, Communications and Multimedia Certification Section. They oversee compliance approvals, type approvals, and special approvals for communications equipment which is to be used exclusively by the applicant. Compliance approvals, also known as type approvals, may be granted to a specific model of communications equipment that has been certified to meet the specified standards, technical specifications, technical checklists, and/or technical declarations. Special approvals is only applicable if the following categories are stated in Communications and Multimedia Act of 1998 or the Technical Standard Regulations of 2000. The first is personal or company. Second, exhibition. 3 is demo, trial, or market survey. 4 is research and development, also known as R&D. And 5 is training. Please note that special approval application is not for local sales. The Communications and Multimedia Act of 1998 defines communications equipment as network facilities or customer equipment used for communications. Any equipment used to provide network services such as public switch telephony, optical fiber, cellular, mobile, terrestrial, satellite, and broadcasting is considered a network facility. Customer equipment includes all types of wireless devices and any equipment used on the customer side of the network service. Fixed line or cellular phones, fax machines, modems, wireless routers and gateways, optical transceivers, satellite receivers, mobile radios or walkie-talkies, smart and digital televisions, and any equipment or device that uses wireless technologies such as a laptop, tablet, camera, watches, drones, baby monitors, CCTV, and others. Here's a short list of regulated products. On the left, we have some categories such as devices with frequencies below 3000 MHz, frequencies above 3000 MHz, Bluetooth, cellular, which includes voice and data, LMR, or digital trunking, also known as Tetra, GOTA, IDEN, microwave, radar, global positioning systems, alarm systems, and in-house paging. On the right, we have examples of specified products such as fixed line or cellular phones, fax machines, modems, wireless routers and gateways, optical transceivers, satellite receivers, mobile radios or walkie-talkies, smart and digital televisions, or any equipment or device using wireless technologies such as laptop, tablets, cameras, watches, drones, baby monitors, CCTV, and many more. Equipment that is exempt are those that are for personal or company's own use, for trials, market surveys or demonstrations, exhibit purposes without network connections, research and development, and training. Approval for trial, experiment, and demonstration is only required if the activities are within the regulatory purview of MCMC under the Communications and Multimedia Act of 1998 and its subsidiary legislations. Experiment involves testing of any non-standard communications apparatus, equipment, or device over a specified period of time and confined to a specific laboratory environment. Demonstration involves operation for the purpose of exhibition of any non-standard communications apparatus, equipment, or device for a specified period of time and confined to a specific and limited geographic location. Trial means operations for the purpose of evaluation of any communications apparatus, equipment, and device that is either non-standard or by a person unauthorized by valid license over a specified period of time and confined to a specific and limited geographic location. If the trial involves provisions of service to end user, it will be limited by number or location and no charges may be imposed. Any person or entity, local or foreign, who has a reasonable purpose to conduct the activities in Malaysia may apply, including licensees, potential licensees, and consultants, commercial and academic researchers, developers, and or fabricators and or manufacturers.
Alright, so we know that RF products require approval prior to import, sale, distribution, and operation within Malaysia. Now let's take a look at the process for obtaining the approval. This process is how MCMC ensure that RF devices used in Malaysia operates effectively without causing harmful interference and otherwise comply with the regulations. Here, we see the high-level view of approval procedure. When starting a new application, the applicant must be registered a company in Malaysia with a valid registration number under Registration of Company or Registration of Business of Companies Commission of Malaysia, which may be categorized as follows: A. Manufacturer, B. Assembler, C. Importer, D. Network Operator, and E. Authorized Consultant. Next, we must ensure the products have been tested by an accredited and recognized laboratory. Test reports should be issued by an accepted laboratory. The standard used for testing is included in the scope of accreditation, and the issue date is not more than 5 years from compliance approval application date. The model name of equipment under test matches or is traceable to the model name of equipment in compliance approval application. The applicant must also declare the trademark or brand of the equipment submitted for compliance approval. The trademark declaration is categorized as follows: A. The applicant legally owns the trademark or brand name. B. The applicant is seeking approval for trademark or brand name registration. C. The applicant had been authorized by the trademark. And D. The equipment has no trademark or brand name, applicable for modules only. Now let's moving on to a more detailed look at the application categories involved in the approval process. A normal application is an application for one model of equipment from one applicant. A package application is an application for one model of equipment from multiple applicants submitted together. The main applicant shall be identified and declared, while the other applicants in the same package shall be the supplementary applicants. Package applications are treated as normal applications. Parallel applications are for identical models of equipment that has been approved earlier for a different certificate holder. Parallel applications refers to the main applicant if the earlier approved application is a package application. Parallel by comparison applications are for similar equipment that has been approved earlier for the same or different certificate holder. Their applications are be allowed for approved models that have no change on communications characteristics and performance, safety, EMC, and SAR or radiation hazards. Local testing applications mean the report are from local Malaysian laboratory serum. Hybrid equipment application is compliance approval based on the following methods: A. Radio module, B. End product, C. Complete system. Parallel and package applications are not applicable to apply as a hybrid equipment. Lastly, a fast-track application is an application which the approval is granted with a shorter time frame compared to the normal application. Here are the general MCMC requirements for product compliance approval. Testing must be done in country, up to 4 samples. Documentation, equipment information and equipment technical specification. Principal manufacturer information, declaration of trademark, brand name, authentication letter, external internal photo, user menu, test reports, administrative documents. Local representative is required. The lead time is usually within 3 to 6 weeks, depends on the products. 1 to 5 year validity. Family model grouping is not allowed. Approvals are issued on a per model basis. This means each model is subject to an application under its own certificate. For modifications, parallel by comparison application will allow for approved model that has no change on communications, characteristics, and performance, safety, EMC, SAR, and radiation hazards, if applicable. Superficial cosmetic changes like a change in color is not considered a modification because it doesn't affect performance of the device, but any change on the radio characteristics warrants a new certification. So what are the rules for product changes or permitted modifications to the certified equipment? When a device is modified, a new approval and certificate is required. Changes or modification must go through a new submission and obtain a new certification. For example, if there is significant change on the physical appearances in the RF specification, then we need to make new certification. But if the changes is not significant, for example, no radio frequency feature added or removed, such as only changing the certificate holder or updating the address, then this can be revised without needing a new certification. Self-labeling mark is eligible for all certificate holder. According to the MCMC requirements, the certificate holder must use the certification mark in its entirety and must include the following: the logo design, the word MCMC, and unique self-labeling mark ID such as the common ID, CID, or certificate holder ID, HID. Unique identification number that provides traceability for each equipment bearing certification mark. The identification number can be in form of either IMEI number or equipment serial number. For MCMC labeling requirement, the unaided eye must be able to read and see the certification mark. The size of the certification mark may be reduced or increased proportionally as needed, but it must not be less than 8 mm in height by 8 mm in width. The certificate holder may use any of the optional colors, black, reverse white, or gray, for the certification mark, as long as visibility is ensured by contrast with the background color or by marking in relief. The font must be visible where the unique ID for certificate holder or common ID for principal and manufacturer is used. Electronic labeling. E-labeling must be used on equipment that is supported by firmware or an operating system that can be displayed, stored, and retrieved from the equipment, and has a built-in display or can only operate in conjunction with a device that has an electronic display screen. Serum carries out routine market sampling and surveillance at least once a year, sampling certified equipment for the purpose of verifying complaints. Any non-compliance with technical standards, falsifying information, unauthorized use of spectrum, compromising public safety, and other safety hazard will be considered offense. The penalties can be suspension or cancellation of certification, a full recall of the communication equipment, and fines up to 500,000 Malaysia ringgit or up to 5-year imprisonment. Now let's take a look at the testing requirements. 1 sample for communication testing, 1 sample for safety testing, 1 sample for EMC testing, manufacturer information, operating procedures or test instructions, declaration of conformity, user menu, technical specifications, letter of authorization, application forms, and photo of equipment. To ensure that communications equipment is safe, interoperable with public communications networks, and does not cause radio frequency interference, it must be certified. A certification is only granted after an authorized body has tested and verified the equipment to ensure it meets the minimum requirement or specified standards. Here are the requirements for certification: manufacturer information, product specification, letter of authorization from applicant or approval holder, block diagram, circuit diagram, schematics, certification forms, RF and EMC test reports, product photos, local representative, and label. Here is a sample of the equipment type approval certificate. The COC shall have the following information: registration number, serial number, name and address of certificate holder, approval number or type approval code, TAC, device category, standards, brand or trademark, model, approval date, and expiry date. The approval of the COC does not grant the certificate holder the right to operate the equipment. Before it can be used, the equipment may be subject to apparatus assignment and/or spectrum assignment licenses, as well as any other approvals or conditions imposed by MCMC or other related bodies. The certificate is valid indefinitely, but a new certificate must be obtained maximum 5 years if the product continues to be imported. Change to the product will require applying for a new certification. The certificate holder is responsible to ensure the following requirements are met before submission of COC renew application. A. COC has been granted in full approval. B. Continued compliance to the current requirements. C. No valid complaint or feedback and findings from market surveillance activities. D. Maximum validity period for a renew is 5 years from current year. Additionally, the applicant can renew the COC 1 month before the expiry date. The new date starts from the expiry date. Now let's talk about the importation. The importation of MCMC is very straightforward. Unless it's specific conditions, the import permits apply to all equipment capable of being used for telecommunication in the frequency band up to 420 terahertz, as well as their motherboards and apparatus, or equipment to be attached or connected to the public networks. IT and networking equipment utilizing tariff code assigned to SIRIM. The usage of approval permit is for 1 model per application per shipment only, valid for 3 months from the date of approval, and no extendable. When import the products, certificate holders shall ensure the quantity of imported equipment do not exceed the quantity declared in the approval permit. This concludes our webinar on Malaysian market access, certifications, and approval for electrical equipment and wireless products. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in understanding the process for MCMC approval and the certifications, as well as what the requirements are applicable. Compliance with the technical requirements of the MCMC is required for all radio and telecom products and ensures telecommunication networks interoperability. Avoid interference between telecommunication equipment, ensure public safety, and support national telecommunication industry, innovation, and engineering. All electrical equipment and devices require approval and testing in Malaysia prior to distribution or placement on the market. Vista Compliance Labs specialize in certifications, approvals, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency device, and it's a 17025 accredited EMC RF compliance test lab and 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the US, Canada, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan, and we provide certification and approvals for all product types in countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with regular updates, follow us online. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on the information presented today, or any general inquiries, you can reach us anytime at info@vista-compliance.com. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.